welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode here. Thank you for giving us a listen. And today, I'm excited to talk with another one of my friends, another colleague here in the real estate world, is a deal creator, a real estate addict. That's a problem of mine as well, too, and a dog dad out of Boise, Idaho. And through creative structures, we're going to touch on this a little bit, creative deal structures, along with a passion to create win-win solutions and a desire to build a better life, he's achieved financial freedom at the age of 28. Man, I had no idea you were that young of a kid yet. Having only been in real estate for 4 years, he also runs a top 100 ranked podcast that I want everybody to give a listen to. It's an awesome show. It's called Chasing Freedom. All the listeners out there for Real Estate Mogul MD, please make welcome Mr. Noah Evans. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And we just had a phenomenal guest on. You guys will have to check it out when we air our episode with Brett. And he came on the Chasing Freedom show and dropped some serious knowledge. So it's a blessing to be here, man. And I'm excited to talk about my journey with you.
Yeah, man, that was a fun show too. So we were talking about some passive income, and we're definitely going to get on that too. But I think what sets you apart from all of our other guests is you've kind of got the best of both worlds here. So you are a full-time real estate investor, and your wife is a physician, right? So now there's this cool thing that's happening here, and we're going to touch into that quite a bit. But before we get started, I do want to mention your Instagram. Is a great place to follow you at NoahEvans_real estate. That's the handle. And you've also got this new thing called Freedom Hotline calls that we'll be talking about a little bit too. So just before we get started, everybody's got that option to connect with you. But kind of getting rolling, tell us a little bit about, where you started really in life or in business, and then how you kind of got into real estate.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back pretty far because I think it creates a little bit of context in the story, and it shows that anybody can do this, which is really the whole essence of, I think, while me and you are both, in this game of not only real estate, but also educating others on how to invest into real estate. And so, going way back, I was a troublesome kid. I got in a lot of trouble. I had a dad that was kind of in and out of my life. And that was really, really hard on me as a teenager. And so it resulted in me making a lot of bad decisions. And luckily for me, I kind of got my head on straight. I went through college. I ended up getting involved in the business program there, and I just loved it. I loved winning the competitions. I loved being, competing and throwing out business ideas and doing pitches. And that was like so much fun. One of the best experiences of my life. And at college, I met my wife, and she really changed my life because she just had this whole different expectation of how she was going to live. And one time she had told me, one day we'll look back on this will be a really fun relationship. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean you'll look back on this and this will have been a fun relationship? That really it hit me right in the heart. I was like, I'm dating you because I want to marry you.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, the person I'm going to marry has just a different set of standards than you do.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm like, we're going to have to do this.
And
so I like challenges. I've always liked being challenges. Kind of goes back to the business competitions. I thrived in those. And I was like, well, I'm going to raise to the occasion. I'm going to be this person that this high quality woman would marry. And so, I started taking my personal development more serious. I started making better decisions. I eliminated a ton of people from my life that weren't good influences. And we made this 180-degree turn and just turned my life around and became worthy. And eventually I did end up getting to marry her. And right as we got married, we shipped ourselves off to Washington so she could attend medical school. And then we shipped ourselves down to Boise, Idaho so she could attend residency. And that wasn't because your primary audience is doctors. And so even though I'm not a physician, I can relate to the struggle of what all of you guys went through to become a physician. It is wild. At times I felt like I was taking care of my wife as if she was a child.
Yeah.
Because she had no time for anything else. I did the home. I took care of the home. I took care of the dogs. I took care of her. I folded her laundry. I cooked her food. I packed her lunches, all while working full time and starting up my real estate wholesaling company. So, but in context, the blessing that was in disguise or the silver lining was watching her work hard showed me what real hard work was. I mean, she would study for 18 hours a day. It's not even an
Wow.
exaggeration. It's actually real. And when I watched that, I realized that I could do the full-time job. I could take care of her and I could start a company all at the same time.
Yeah. Well, a thing that hit me there, Noah, was, mentioning that kind of like she had a mindset shift before you did. And almost like, to me, it instantly goes back to maybe her family structure, because she had been conditioned up to that point by someone, something in her life. You have a little different story than her. I have a little different story than you. Everybody has their own stories, but we have these key points and these key opportunities where it arises to us, where it's like, okay, in a relationship specifically, it's okay. You can think about who you want to be with as a partner, but what's more important is think about who you need to become to be with that kind of person. And she hit the nail on the head on that, right? And that hit home with you, Noah. I was like, ouch.
Yep.
Ouch. But this is everybody out there, no matter where you're at in your career or in your relationship, building, either one of them, if you can not only imagine who you want to be with, but imagine who you need to be with that person. And that goes exactly with real estate investing. It goes exactly with all other kind of building businesses. It goes with investing in general. Is who do you have to be to become that type of investor, right?
Yeah.
And what are the things do I need to change? What goals do I need to have? That's awesome.
My wife's been a phenomenal teacher to me. I think it applies to, like you said, business partnerships or whoever it is that you're out trying to serve or become or do. First you think of what type of person is worthy of those things and how can I emulate that? Yeah.
And I talked to you just before we started recording here on, this is kind of cool because you get to talk about your relationship with your wife on the show. And I'd made mention that, I get to talk about my relationship with my wife a lot. And those conversations are usually like, I told you so. I knew that this was going to happen. Like, it's just this thing that they have. And I don't know if it's just me as a man or the way I was raised or whatever. It's like, or my personality, my driving personality. I hear these things and sometimes, man, they just don't register or they don't click. And then when everything comes to fruition, I can look to my side and be like, she's my 50-50 business partner, and I'm like, and she's like, she shrugs her shoulders like, I told you. Like, yes, you did. So It's a blessing, man. It's absolutely a blessing. And now your wife, is she in residency or is she attending?
Yeah, she's in her third year of residency.
Nice. So still in the struggle per se on the income, hours, all of that stuff. And then was she family practice?
Yeah, so she may take this specialty to go be like a psychiatrist.
Oh, interesting.
With like mental illness and stuff like that. And so we'll kind of see. It just depends on if she wants to do a whole another year of a fellowship or just go right into working.
Right. Very interesting. So now she's kind of there in her career and you're where you're at. You're investing full time, right? That's your full time gig. So tell me about your first deal and how'd you come across that and how'd you know the time was right?
Yeah. So, it was actually more out of fear is why I got into real estate. I was fearful of not being able to live up to the man that this woman needed me to be, live up to being a person worthy of being a part of her family. Her father is a dentist. He's a phenomenal example to me. He's the best father figure I've ever had. And so I wanted to be a son-in-law worthy of being in his family. And I was afraid with the job that I'd taken when I moved to Washington because all of my connections got wiped away. There was a lot of great companies and a lot of great entrepreneurs I could have worked with in Utah, being that I built up my relationships and connections there. But Washington was a fresh start, clean. And I knew nobody. And so I took a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I was kind of moving through the ranks, but it wasn't progressing fast enough. And there was no real wealth building. I was collecting a paycheck, but I had to trade my time. And so nothing was compounding. And out of fear, I'm like, something has to change because this is no exceptional life.
So I hear you using these words kind of in a different mindset now. Is that the same mindset you had then? Were you able to understand the trading time for money and compounding Were you able, I mean, were those pieces, because to me, when I hear you say those things, it's a man who has read personal development books and,
Yeah.
like has picked out these key things that we need to know.
Yeah, I would say even at that time, I understood those. And that was because I started picking up the books long before I got into business, which some people say there's no point, right? But I think there is, because opportunity is best taken by the person who's like readily available to take it down, right? And so when it pops up in front of you, if you don't know what to do with it, it's nothing.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, I definitely started reading the books in college, and the entrepreneurs that I was able to surround myself with there shaped my life for sure. I had a couple cool internships where I got to see people making tons of money and doing really, really cool things that impacted their communities. And that was always more impactful to me than just like a high paying job, right? Because the job kind of owned me, where I wanted to own something and build something that could be passed down, or, and yeah, I would say, yeah, passed down to future generations, my children. I don't have them yet, but that's the whole essence of doing all this. So, my first deal was pretty cool though. So I was working at Enterprise, starting up the wholesale company, taking care of my wife. It was our first year in med school for her. And I decided to dump like the little money I did have into postcards. So while working at Enterprise, I was driving around collecting addresses of all these dilapidated houses, putting them on a list. And by the way, I did this manually. I did it with a cell phone and a notepad and a spreadsheet. And I waited till I got to about, I think, 1,500 addresses before I sent the postcards.
Driving for dollars, you got 1,500 addresses. Holy cow.
Yeah. Yep.
Holy cow.
So, I mean, but it was easy because at Enterprise, at my first position, I would be taking customers around and delivering to accounts and picking up cars at accounts. So we just take a different path back to work every day.
Interesting.
So it's, I can grab 20 addresses in a day, sometimes more, and then I do it on the weekends. Well, I gathered the whole list, sent the postcards, drained my bank account, went for, left it all on the line. And
were you about a couple thousand in the cost on something like that?
Yeah, it was like $3,000, which to me at the time, though, that was like an entire like month's salary at that company. Yeah. It was a lot of money. And nothing. It was crickets, absolute crickets. And I was
one touch?
Oh, man.
One touch?
Yep. It was one. It was a 2-sequence campaign. But yeah, we didn't get any hits. And so finally someone calls. I go over there and I just have no idea what I'm doing on it. I get the deal under contract, but I blow it up and it doesn't close. But I was like, hey, I did get a contract signed. This is pretty cool. And we're going to come back to that because it's pretty funny, because if I would have known what I was doing, I could have closed that deal. So I'm like, I'm too far in and I can't quit now. I'm like way too far into this. And I ended up just deciding, I was like, I'm going to go walk for dollars. I'm going to go actually take my dogs. I'm going to be a real person. I'm going to have a touch point in person with these people and see what happens. So this one lady, she had car parts all over her lawn and cats everywhere.
Wow.
And I go and talk to her and I get to know her story and I find out her struggles. And that was the key. That was the key differentiating factor of why I was able to close this deal and not the other one, is I learned what their struggles were and how I could actually help. And it wasn't just about the money. And I'm not kidding you. I visited this lady's house probably 15 times, just getting to know her, just building a relationship. And I just said, I'm going to follow through with this lady until I can help her, even if I don't make a dollar, but I will see this through. And eventually we ended up putting it on contract. I knew so little about assignments that I erased my name on the purchase and sales agreement and put the buyer.
Oh, no.
Yep. And this is, I think, like the cool part about the story is that like I've made so many mistakes. I didn't make money on my first marketing campaign, but the only reason I'm here today is because I kept going.
Yep.
And so many people quit. In fact, one of my buddies who worked at Enterprise with me started the marketing campaign with me as a partner, and he quit and I gave him his money back and he can keep going, and it's very interesting to just see the different pathways. But yeah, so we ended up closing that. Luckily, the buyer was ethical and he paid me my $10,000 assignment fee because he didn't have to, because his name was on the purchase and sales agreement. He was also the same buyer that ended up buying the very first house I put under contract, but I didn't know him at the time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and he actually paid $9,000 more than I had it under contract for. So it was a good deal. Yep. It's just that I didn't have the right buyer, didn't really know what I was doing. But yeah, so I mean, without that, that kind of gave me the idea that it was real. Sometimes you really need to taste that first win to be like, okay, wait a minute, this is real. I can repeat this. That was at the time, that was like 2 or 3 months of salary for me at my job in one deal that I was like doing on the weekends.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Taste the reality, like being able to taste the results is very interesting. So you started out wholesaling. It's very interesting. And so wholesaling, just generally speaking, I can place a property in contract to purchase. And the contract I use is assignable, which means I can assign that my interest in this contract to another end buyer. So they get to buy the house. And what allows us to collect a fee for this is because we're selling the interest, the equitable interest in the property. We're not selling the property itself. So we're basically selling the piece of paper. This allows us to not be licensed as a real estate agent in order to collect a fee or a commission for this, right? It's not a commission, it's a fee selling the paper. Now, I was a little bit different. I was fixing and flipping before I even knew what wholesale was. And you better believe the first time I taste that piece of paper for 10 grand, 20 grand, I was like, I'm not flipping 2x4s anymore. I'm flipping paper. So it was very, very interesting. And then what led you to go from wholesaling into holding?
So when we moved from Washington to Idaho, I just had been like so fixated on like, I got to get one of my own. Like I got to hold on to it because all the wealthiest people I had ever seen owned real estate. When I heard about people being able to cash out $200,000-300K and reinvest it, it's because they're pulling it out of their primary residences at the time. So my education level there was small, right? The biggest dream I had was to buy a house and wait for it to appreciate for $200K and pull it out and reinvest it. And that was my goal. That's what I wanted to do. Yep. So we'd stacked up a couple of these assignment fees and put it all away in savings. I think at the time, maybe I'd completed 8 or 9 deals by the time we moved to Boise. And I was like, okay, we're not signing a rental lease here because like we're going to buy something before I quit this job at Enterprise and I don't have the W-2 income. So we found exactly what we needed. It took like 3 or 4 weeks, but we set out very specific parameters. We wanted a house hack. So we found a house with a backyard and a front yard with an upstairs unit and downstairs unit where everything was separate. The back unit has alley access. The front yard has street parking. And so they were completely separate. Only thing I had to do was a little bit of renovations. I had to add a kitchen, turn the half bath into a full bath, and then drywall in like a door to separate the units, basically, a frame and a door. So that ended up being like 17 grand. And that was kind of my entry to flipping as well, because I go, wow, I think I did that like for a pretty good price. The contractors and I kind of worked it out and they gave me a really good deal, but that's because I formed a relationship with them first. That contractor ended up becoming my business partner. Wow. So, we went to one house hack and then we eliminated our largest expense, which was the mortgage payment. We had I think we were paying $200 out of pocket per month to live there by the time everything was said and done. Wow. We're skipping over a lot, but the mortgage payment was $1,100 on a $220,000 house with a 3% interest rate. And the downstairs tenant, I moved them in and they started immediately paying like $900 a month. So now that rental is paying $1,450 a month for downstairs. We just moved out last year, and upstairs is paying $1,650.
Oh, wow.
It was a phenomenal asset. And we bought it right in COVID. And I remember walking up and down the street and I'm like, oh my Lord, I'm the dumbest person on this whole block. No one has ever paid more for a house on the street than me. And my mom's telling me, don't buy a house. Everything's in turmoil. And my family's telling me this is not a good idea. And, my wife was like, I don't know. I don't think we should be putting our money into that right now. Thank goodness we did it. Yeah. So now we have a lock on that. We rolled that money over. It's almost $1,300 a month in pure passive income that comes just directly to us. It allowed us to move into our new bigger house, and it's paying a part of this mortgage. So that's been a huge compounding factor to us. It's just that one little decision.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think the creative, before we get into creative stuff, is that in itself, turning that single family into a duplex is massive. And you can't do that everywhere. Definitely want to do your due diligence out front and go through that exercise of checking with the municipalities to make sure that can happen. But huge. Yeah, congratulations on that, man. That's awesome. So you just said something about your family telling you that you shouldn't be doing this. And the very last episode I just did, same thing. The family, and it's through love, right? It's through love. It's great. It's through love. But I asked them this question. I said, okay, did they invest in real estate? No, they didn't, right? And even if you get, yes, they did, they're still just concerned about me. That we all have to overcome these hurdles, especially when we're younger. And I have a similar scenario where it was only do one flip at a time. And it was, it's okay, you can do this flipping stuff, but, don't get in over your head. Don't do more than one at a time. But the economies of scale don't work like that way. Like if I wanted to keep Cruz busy and keep deals flowing, like I had to do more than one. But it was those close to me giving me that same kind of feedback. So it's hard. So it happens to a lot of people where it's like, don't do it. It's not risky. It's not the right time. And we have to overcome these things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So what did your, I'm interested, what did your father-in-law say at this time? You were married at this time, right? Looking at this potential duplex, and what did he say? Did he say now's not the right time?
Absolutely. Yeah. He was on the same page. Now's not the right time. And you brought up a really good point. The way that I had viewed it was everybody has different lenses, right? It's almost like we all put on different glasses. Yeah, perspectives.
Yes.
And so, my father-in-law's perspective was you get the highest education you can, like a doctor, right? A dentist, and that's how you earn your income. But my perspective was I can't always trade my time for the money. I can't really scale that. I can't get ahead. I can't just keep giving up my time. And so for me, I think it's, what is Dean Graziosi's book? I can't remember the name of it. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or the 7 Ways to Become a Millionaire. I can't remember the name of his book, but in his book, he clearly lays out that you should only take advice from people who are excelling in the category in which you're pursuing. So for example, like you said, if my father-in-law hasn't ever bought real estate as an investment vehicle, he's probably not even though you're right, he absolutely loves me. He wants me to do the best, but he's not the best person to seek real estate advice from. Instead, I listen to my mentors who owned real estate, who owned commercial buildings, who owned the warehouses in which their businesses operated in. And those guys were telling me, you got to do it. You have to do it. They were telling me 3% was a great interest rate, but I didn't feel like it was that great.
What was the percent? What was the percent?
3%.
3.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But it's my first house. So, it wasn't even relative to me. I'm like, I don't know understand what that means.
Yeah. So I just pulled up Dean Graziosi. How do you say it? Dean Graziosi. Uh-huh. And the first one that popped up is Millionaire Success Habits.
Yes. That's the book.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. In that book, he references, take advice from people in the category in which they've already been successful on the route that you're headed.
I also referenced this one earlier too, the Richest Man in Babylon, where the gentleman gave his son a certain amount of money and then gave him a time period and said, okay, bring that money back to me. Show me you're worthy of the inheritance. Well, the first thing he does is lose the money because he gives it to somebody that had no idea what they were talking about, but they sold him on an idea, right? So it's that kind of idea. Same way when we've got these people around us, most of the time family, telling us that it's not. And that's how we build our team too, right? It's like I want to work with accountants who own real estate. I want to work with real estate agents who own single family rentals, right? If I want to work with somebody who's doing commercial, I want to work with somebody who owns their own commercial, right? Somebody with that experience piece in the game already.
That's a really good bridge of kind of marrying the idea of like we look up to people and we want to follow their advice, but like also making sure that in the services we're using within real estate, are they doing what we're asking them to help us do? Yes.
I
like that.
And the place that we met in Columbus, we've got some colleagues in Columbus. Their platform is called Results Driven now. And that's really like scaling up the systems and processes and really turning real estate investing into your number one goal, right? And we had met there, and the big thing that stood out to me about them is now the name of their platform, Results Driven, but they practice what they preach, and there's so many different people who will say, hey, do this, and then you ask them, are they doing that? And they're not. Like they don't even have the first clue of what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So with your wife's just kind of like just getting started in medicine, where does her passion and like where does the communication come from on the trading time for money piece, and where is that the ultimate passive income goal lie for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So a goal of ours, at least as a family, is we hope that my wife, let me take that back. We're planning for my wife to not work more than 3 days a week. Mm-hmm. And that's because we don't plan to rely entirely on her income. Luckily for us, we're a dual income family. Not everybody has that option. But a part of that is because we have, real estate holdings and we have some passive income. I think an interesting thing that we plan on doing with her once she starts earning her, full doctor salary and wages is we're not going to allow that to add a lifestyle creep for us. So we're living solely off of my income right now. Even her income and residency, we're not touching. It's all going, into savings and then redeployed into different investments. And so we plan for the first 2 or 3 years to take all of her income and go buy. And we're not going to do nothing crazy. We're not going to go buy big apartments. We're going to buy what we know: fourplexes, duplexes, triplexes. We're going to stay below fourplex because that's what we know right now. We know it's a safe vehicle. We're trying to manage the downside with, the economy being a little uncertain. And we're just going to keep stacking those. And our goal is to get, a minimum of basically $150 in cash flow per door. And we don't want to do more than 20% down. So we might leverage some seller financing in there. But in essence, what's going to be really cool by doing this is most people coming out of residency, and when I talk to the other residents that are in her program, they go, yeah, we're just going to pay off our student loan debt as fast as possible. I go, okay, you can do that. And you're going to eliminate this 7% debt. That's it. You're just eliminating a 7% debt. But at the end of it, your money's gone. We're going to make the smallest monthly payment possible. Probably, I think all we're going to end up covering is the interest. So our interest is going to continue to compound, but we're not going to touch our principal. Instead, we're shifting it all to buying assets. And once we get to fourplexes, we basically are covering the interest and principal payment on her loan. It's a small payment, right? It won't be a big payment. If we do that for 3 more years, all of a sudden we're making a $4,500, $5,500 a month payment towards her student loan debt that we're not doing anything for. Right. That's not coming from us. It's coming from tenants.
Not trading any time for it.
Yep.
Now, granted, there is some time acquiring, you guys manage, acquire, renovate that stuff. So there's some time that goes into that. That's a great plan. And it's kind of like looking at the difference of where the debt is, the cost of money. But I hear your focus on how that money is being acquired to pay it down. So I'm going to focus on the asset creation in order for that liability to be removed. Yeah, very cool. So tell me a little bit about the creative solutions. And you mentioned seller financing there. And when you get into duplex, triplex, quadplex, it is likely that you're going to get more opportunity in a seller financed creative scenario. For me, in single family, creative scenario can be subject to, it can be owner financed, those kind of things that will come up. Tell me about some of the creative situations that you like that come to mind when we're talking about duplex, triplex, quadplex.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways that we've been able to create some really phenomenal deals is by following the Burr model. So it's, coined by Brandon Turner over at Bigger Pockets. I've got to give a shout out to him. He's been a great teacher of all sorts of real estate strategies. But we've applied that to some of our multifamily deals. So some of our holdings. So, we'll acquire something, but we'll work with the seller. We'll get them to leave a certain portion in just for the duration of our rehab, because then we have to bring no money down. This allows us to scale a lot faster. I think that makes a lot of people nervous, right? When they're like, well, then you're pretty highly leveraged because you have your loan with the hard money company. Then you got your seller carry usually in second or personally guaranteed to you, right? Sometimes both. And, you've got to hope that all works, but it's all math. It can all be worked out in a spreadsheet. That's the 2-dimensional research. 3-dimensional research is understanding the microeconomy in the town and what's going on. And, are people still moving there, or what's really going on inside the city, right? But so, just as an example, one of the fourplexes in Indiana, I think we purchased, they were selling a fourplex and a triplex. We purchased the triplex. It was turnkey, is ready to go. So we just purchased it with the loan. We got them to carry $50,000 of the fourplex's cost for, I think, 8 months while we renovated it and recycled all the tenants to higher quality tenants. But in doing so, we had no money down on that property ever. We didn't have it down on the hard money loan. The hard money lending company gave us the rehab funds. And when we refinanced it, we paid off the seller, and our equity is what was left in the deal, but no cash. So if you really think about it, the return there is pretty much infinite. So that's one way we've been creative. Here locally, we've had to get really creative as the market turned. So we turned a single family home on 3 acres into like 4 or 5 different sources of income because I just refused to lose money on it. The mortgage payment's $2,700 a month. The rental on the home itself, which is how most of us think, single family home rental, only way to collect income is the single family home. That's a net loss of like $1,000 a month. That doesn't sound very good to me. So luckily the property had like a barn and it had, some fenced pastures. And then we put in like a couple RV pads, and now we've reversed that and we're actually cash flowing about $1,300 a month on that property.
Interesting. RV pads. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that is like, one, you got to get out there and you just got to start experiencing it. And I've had my fair share of losses. I've lost money in real estate for sure. But in doing so, I've always learned something that's propelled me further and helped me gain better knowledge. For example, this is a weird rule. Not everybody probably has this rule, but I don't ever flip houses in HOAs because my exit strategy is so limited. Sometimes you can't Airbnb it. You definitely can't add no RV pads. Definitely can't add barn. You definitely can't add pastures and rent it out to people who want to have horses and cows or whatever. So my exit strategy is so limited. So yeah, I don't buy or flip or hold anything inside of HOAs. It's just not worth it for me. So most of our stuff is, it's like older houses on larger lots because there's so many exits. I mean, the house I live in right now, 2 of my buddies store their RVs here for $50 a month. It's nominal. It's a small amount, right? But what happens if you had 10 houses with 4 RV storage spots on each house? Right. It's an additional $200 a month in cash flow in every single house.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And the creative piece of the seller carry. So you mentioned hard money lender, which is somebody that's going to, it's a private entity that's going to lend you money. Typically interest a little higher just because of the risk that they are assuming. You're going to look at some points. You're going to have to jump through some hoops in order to get the stuff done, appraisal still, all of that stuff, escrow stuff, and you've got to have money up front. But what you did on this creative situation is basically by having that seller carry, it looked like money up front at close, but you had a second mortgage and a secondary note that allowed you to show that equity to the lender, not have any money in the deal until you refinance on the BRRRR strategy, buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then ultimately repeat. And once you did that, you paid both mortgages off. And you've got one mortgage now that's covered and you're cash flowing on top of it.
Yep. Correct.
Very good. I see the smile on your face as I'm explaining that too, right?
You explained it so well. You just I was like, man, I gotta have Brett break down what I'm saying more often because.
Yeah, right. I like bringing it back just because it helps me listen too. Like if I'm listening and then I bring it back, and then for the listeners too, it's like, okay, for me, I heard you say a couple key things in there. And, hard money lender, the owner carry, the BRRRR strategy. So just putting all those pieces back together, and making sure, because, when we're doing shows like this, I don't know who's actually listening to us. So if you guys do have questions, send those things in to info@physicianwealthsystems.com. We can connect you with Noah here. His handle again is Noah Evans, NOAHEVANS _real estate. Hit him on Instagram. And of course, his show is awesome. I absolutely love it. It's the Chasing Freedom Show podcast, top 100. Congratulations on that, young man. And as a young man, being so far along in this journey, and this look like this catch of the idea of chasing freedom. But I say it so often, being present in the moment. It's not the destination, it's the journey. And it sounds like you've got a great wife there, helping you, see that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. It's been fun. It's been fun to compare and contrast just the different ways that we think. And, like you were saying, she's almost always right. She's almost never been wrong. And I actually mean that. Like, I'm not just saying that because that's what we have to agree to. My wife has intuition like no other. And so I rely on her a lot for different business strategies. I'm not saying I'm the best at listening. I don't always follow what she says, but she's never been wrong. So.
Yeah. So this is Real Estate Mogul MD. The new hashtag is the show you want your wife to listen to, because every time I feel like I've gotten up here lately, it's like we have these conversations and it's just the relationships mean so much to us. And our relationship, as well as we're moving forward in our paths and our journey. making sure that we stay in touch and communicate. Tell me just a little bit before we go about this Freedom Hotline calls.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something I'm pretty passionate about. I started the podcast because I feel very blessed to have been able to acquire the knowledge to buy real estate, hold, and create cash flow and passive income. And I want to share it with others because it's not an impossible thing to do. But I remember, because it wasn't that long ago, that I had no real estate and I was completely reliant on W-2 income. And I remember just like looking up at people and admiring them on different podcasts and shows and being like, wow, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be them. And then I did it. And it was like, I just put my head down for a couple of years and I went, and all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm where I always dreamed of being just a few short years ago. And of course the goalpost always moves, right? I want to acquire more and do more and build more. But the Freedom Hotline exists so that way we can set people off on the right direction. So whether you're wanting to get into buy your first house, or you're not sure how you're going to scale to 20 rental units, or how you're going to replace half your income, whatever your goal is, with passive income. So it exists that way you can call me up and we can strategize and come up with a quick game plan for you to at least get you pointed in the right direction. And it's been really impactful so far. We've had a couple of people that have jumped on. One of them actually became like a student of mine. I don't do a big coaching program, but occasionally we take on, one or two people a year, and we'll kind of follow them through their journey. Well, one of those guys just got his fourth Airbnb. Oh, and nice. So, he's upwards of $2,000 a month in cash flow right now. And that's a big win for me. That feels really cool.
Yeah.
I don't have a quantified goal yet, like a lot of people do. I know a lot of people are like, I want to help, 1,000 people become millionaires. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that's going to look like for me yet, but I do know I want to help more people achieve financial freedom because it's totally possible. Mm-hmm. But who you surround yourself with matters. The education you're consuming matters. The people you're listening to, they matter. Right.
Yeah.
And, this is a phenomenal podcast that you guys are listening to. Brett, you're an incredible host. The way you can take a complex idea and just break it down. It's almost like you're doing bullet points, but just verbally. And it makes it so clear to understand. It's been a great experience.
Awesome. Well, I always have a blast. And I always have a blast chatting with you, Noah. Last question. What's something that you wish you could go back? And it's fun because I'll ask this question. I have to change the age since you are the young man of that you are. What if you could go back 10 years to the 18-year-old Noah? What was something that you would tell yourself? And not only what was something you would tell yourself, but who is someone that you would point to say, watch him?
That's a really great question. I think if I could go back to 18, I would probably remind myself of my worth. I think that's what I would do. I think I would go back and I'd say, hey, you're worthy of great success. You're capable of it. You can do it. I think that would be the advice I'd give myself. And if I had to say, go watch somebody, I would probably say, so my very first mentor was Rich Christensen out of Utah. And he's a serial entrepreneur and done a bunch of cool little things and a philanthropist. I would probably say find a way to get a hold of that guy a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I could have like 3 or 4 more years with him, man, game changer.
Very interesting. That's awesome. And the one thing you did mention earlier too was Bigger Pockets. We'll get that up on the website too, because it's just a massive, massive platform. Brandon Turner, the creator there. They also have a podcast as well too. He's written a couple of best-selling books. Great resource. And again, it's possible. And I will echo this. You are worth it. You have the value. It's within you. Learn to ask yourself the right questions, and that perspective, those glasses that you look at the world through, make sure that they're shiny and they're clean, because that moment where the opportunity is met with preparedness, that's the success. That's where we meet and build that relationship with the person we're supposed to be, right? Who do I have to become to be that person, to be with that person? So it gives me the goosebumps to kind of see life in that direction. And man, thanks again for your time today, Noah.
No, it was an absolute blessing to be able to come on the show, man. I appreciate you, and just grateful for our friendship. So
awesome.
Let's continue it.
Let's keep rocking. Let's keep making some deals and changing some lives. Hey,
Absolutely.
everybody. Thank you for listening today on the Real Estate Mogul MD. If you have any questions, for Noah, I can give you some more information on the Freedom Hotline calls. Remember to check him out on Instagram. Check out the show Chasing Freedom on podcast and email me some questions. If you want to be a guest on the show, info@physicianwealthsystems.com. If you want to learn more about real estate, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks again for another day, whether you're in the hospital, in an office building, in your car, jogging, whatever it may be. Pay attention to what you're doing. Be present in the moment, and we'll catch you next time.